Thursday, January 15th, 2015. If I could get a roll call, please.
Chair Pop,
Present.
Vice Chair Guyer,
Here.
Board Member Liu,
Here.
Board Member Kim,
Present.
Board Member Ballantyne.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now is the time when we look to the public for oral communications for items not on the agenda. I don't have any speaker cards at this time, and so we'll close the oral communications period and move forward. Are there any agenda changes, additions, or deletions today? Seeing none, and we don't have any minutes to approve at this point, so we'll move right into our public hearing. The first item on our agenda today is the bike bridge design competition. And I don't have much of a description to read for that other than it's a review and comment on the 3 proposed designs for the Palo Highway 101 pedestrian bicycle overcrossing design competition. And I think we have staff here to lead us through this. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here before you. I'm Elizabeth Ames. I'm the project manager in Public Works, and we had the design competition on December 17th, and I think most of you were there. And the consensus was that submission A was the winner. Submission A is on the far left. We have all the designs up on the boards here to the left. Those design boards show the concepts, the 3 concepts that were presented on December 17th. The design teams went ahead and they did all of their presentations with PowerPoint and all of that, and the jury concluded submission A, for the most part, was the winner. So we're carrying this recommendation to all of the boards and commissions, and we're trying to gather up comments. Like for example, I've got this matrix here which is updated. This is a comments matrix, which is like the first page of attachment F in the packet. But I think this is a great document to kind of summarize all the pros and cons that we've gathered to date. So we just updated that. That matrix now shows the Planning Commission comments that we got from last night. So essentially, we're trying to bring these comments to the council. The council meeting is February 23rd. Is that right? Yeah. And that's the tentative date. Hopefully we'll make that. And the goal would be to have the council select a design, preferably, and then potentially staff would be authorized to negotiate a design contract. And that could happen, possibly we'd bring back a contract in the spring, say March, and begin the design. So that's the idea behind this process. And I just wanted to mention we have 2 teams here this morning, and that's from the submission A and C. So those are the top 2 firms. Submission B was a clear third in the ranking. So we have the 2 teams here this morning, which is great, so I don't have to go through the explanation. So what we thought we would do is show the YouTube videos, and then, which are online, right? The YouTube video was part of the submission. And then we'd ask the teams to maybe comment for like 5 minutes. It's up to the board to decide that, but they can talk about their designs and return this back to you and for further comment to pass on to the council. With that, thank you.
That's great, thanks. So do you want to go ahead and run us through the videos?
For many years, the infrastructure of the automobile has created emissions, noise, and divisions in our communities. Palo Alto has instead embraced a more multimodal future, choosing walking and cycling, developing car sharing, and even self-driving vehicles. Palo Alto's Adobe Creek pedestrian and cyclist bridge is an opportunity to create a more multifunctional, forward-looking infrastructure, drawn from the trajectories of the cyclists moving along it and the sinuous waterways of the bay.
It is designed not as an icon, but as an experience.
Here at the confluence of the building Barren Creeks, we can create an opportunity for experience, for beauty, and a deeper understanding of our natural world. West of Highway 101, the bridge ascends in a counterclockwise loop, arcing over the freeway before descending in a broad circle. To the east, a new gathering space provides a place to sit and take in the view, with amenities including bicycle repair. Encircled by the bridge is a new vernal pond and boardwalk, a new way to explore the Baylands. Recognizing the challenges of multiple users traveling the same route, the bridge creates dedicated zones for pedestrians and cyclists, lifting one above the other and separating them as planned. Over the freeway, the arch gestures to the sky, creating a cathedral-like space. More than a crossing, it is a space to pause and reflect. Twin pathways over the Baylands integrate structure within their solid interior rails, levitating over the sensitive landscape below, with piers nearly 100 feet apart. West of the freeway, bicycles are outdoor, maximizing their turning radius. Here, pedestrians are oriented outward, the walkway expanding to provide a place for bird watching, resting on a bench, and taking in the view. Structured as an arch, the bridge leans northward, counterposed to the deck, a network of thin cables between. A gateway over the freeway, this innovative structure is slender, structurally efficient, and cost-effective, with excellent seismic performance. It eliminates supports in the median and between US 101 and Bayshore, increasing safety and future flexibility. Constructed of corrosion-resistant weathering steel, its warm hues are sympathetic with the Baylands' natural palette. Our innovative approach extends to construction, erected at a temporary location while foundation work is underway.
The arch can then be rolled into place with self-propelled modular transports, reducing traffic disruption to a single nighttime closure. The landscape recognizes its strategic place in the broader watershed, leveraging its small footprint for larger scale change through hydrologic and symbolic connection. Stormwater is captured from the bridge, bike path, and frontage road, treated and routed to a new basin. As this water mixes with seasonal groundwater and residual bay mud salinity, this vernal pool creates a new ecological niche. Overflow and gray water from a possible bathroom and drinking fountains can be recaptured in tanks concealed in the bridge abutments, irrigating vertical gardens of pollinator species flanking their sides. This site, like the rest of the bay, must address sea level rise. The design anticipates this change, enabling future ecologies and habitats, and communicating the importance of resiliency. Bridge lighting is designed to conserve energy and be environmentally sensitive. Integrated sensors trigger white light in response to motion, guiding users along the pathway. From the freeway beneath, a jogger is visible as they approach, a comet's trail arcing overhead with a passing cyclist. Finally, a large-scale artwork is integrated into the bridge, utilizing technology to engage the natural phenomena of the site. Brushed stainless steel discs are fixed to the cable net, weather vanes swaying in the wind, deterring birds and ensuring their safety. Undulating with each gust and passing vehicle, they sparkle in the sun, an ineffable experience of motion and light. We look to places like Palo Alto for what is possible, for what is next for smart, forward-looking cities. We hope this new bridge can similarly be a model, a confluence uniting the community, the landscape of the bay, and your shared future.
Okay, so I also forgot to mention that Judith Wasserman is here, the chair of the competition jury, so she's also here for comments. But right now, we can turn it over to the design team to talk a few moments about the design.
Actually, I thought what we might do is ask Judith to give us a summary of the events. Do you want them to go first?
Yeah, let them do it, and then I'll sort of.
All right, I'll defer to Judith's request, and we'll have the applicants provide their presentations. We'll give you, can you do it in 5 minutes?
That'd be great.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Will Carson with 64 North. I've met a number of you in December. It's great to be back. We just first wanted to say thank you to the city. I think it's remarkable that the city elected to do this through a competition and not through a normal procurement process. I think that's a very significant commitment on the part of the city to design excellence, and I think that obviously the ARB is part of that. We appreciate that. We're very pleased to have been selected by the jury, and I think I just wanted to talk a little bit about our team in addition to the scheme itself. Our team is led by HNTB and brings really notable experience on Cupertino's Mary Avenue Bridge, where that bridge was the first cable-stayed bridge over a freeway in California, permitted in 6 months with Caltrans, and notably brought in on budget, in contrast to a previous scheme developed by another team, which was double the budget, unfortunately, and also similar projects at Happy Hollow in San Jose. The city asked us to really look at 4 different goals, and I just wanted to touch on those goals as we've thought about our project. The first goal that I wanted to talk about was the interconnectedness, or really the integration of these many elements as they relate to especially use. So as you saw, we've taken separation of the different uses very seriously. They're separated differently in plan, either by material, physically separated by interior rails at the turns, vertically separated in a number of places, and actually planimetrically separated around the curve over the Baylands. We worked with local bicycle advocate Jeff Seltzer and a number of his kind of constituents to tune that, and we took that very seriously. We also elected to choose radii that are larger than the city's 15% plan, but smaller than Caltrans's minimum design standard, because we felt that the speeds were such that they could then be, bicyclists would then control their speeds appropriately, where we're mixing, young cyclists, the elderly, people walking, all these different user groups. And also, I think we've taken integration very seriously in terms of, the really small details. So a rumble strip at the top of the descent, integration of the required missile barrier along over the freeway into the cable stays of the arch, so that it really goes away, isn't unsightly at that small level. The second topic that the city asked us to look at was really versatility in terms of balancing functionality in relationship to aesthetics. And here I think the real key issues are the clear span that we've provided. We're the only team to have done so over the entirety of the freeway, and not putting any supports in either of the medians as well, allowing for future flexibility vis-a-vis the freeway, and also avoiding a very important 30-inch gas main of PG&Es, which, again, we're the only team to have cleared that. And I think I want to just talk a little bit about cost in relationship to that. I think there's a little bit of misconception by lay people that a deeper beam is a more expensive beam as it relates to our scheme. And because we've elected to use an arch, and because of our previous experience, we're very comfortable that this project, it does in fact meet the $7.2 million cost. In Happy Hollow, we did 2 arches of similar span that are straight for $4 million. And the other piece of that strategy is that the entire bridge is actually built out of a single member, that it's a single W section. We're cutting it in half and using as an upturned T for the deck, and that allows us to buy that in quantity. And is, I think, a pretty elegant solution where the members are actually only 18 inches tall, really minimal, and I think you're going to really see through it in many ways. In terms of conservation, I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I think it's pretty clear we've taken sustainability and landscape as a really integral part of the team, or part of the scheme, and an integral part of our team, providing amenities and taking a kind of long-term view, not just thinking about this bridge as it exists now, but thinking about a 50 to 100-year life, and what does that mean in terms of landscape, what does that mean in terms of maintenance. And then lastly, in terms of innovation, the city asked us to look at bird safety in an innovative way, and we worked with a series of ornithologists to use technology that you see in vineyards to make sure that birds are safe from this cable net, but also that it's an extraordinary experience of artwork as designed by Ned Kahn. So in sum, I think we've really attempted to produce a gateway, a landmark that is contextual with the Baylands and the relationship of architecture, engineering, art, and landscape as it relates to that coherent experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Okay, so I guess we could show the next video, which would be submission B.
Perfect, thank you.
The portage.
We were called to the competition to connect Palo Alto to the Baylands Preserve. So the real question for us was how to get across in an inspirational way, in a beautiful way.
The structure in its simplest form models the frame of a wood frame kayak covered with skin.
Our poetic response to this project is that of portage, moving people from one side to the other across this barrier. A kayak is a very solid structure, but very light.
Using wood as a material is key in providing the most minimal impact on the environment. The lightest material will provide the most economical design and feel most appropriate, linking the communities of the high-tech world with the sustainability aspects of the bay.
The way this bridge occupies the land is really one of tremendous respect. This is a major bird watching area in the Pacific Flyway. Everything from hawks to waterfowl, it's extraordinarily diverse. The bridge itself becomes kind of that first experience of coming to an observation deck and having that opportunity to catch your first glimpse of the very rich ecology, of the very rich bird life that is found in and around the preserve. What's really spectacular about this ascent and descent is the relationship to water.
We collect all the water across the span. That will go into a basin, bring it through this amazing artwork by Ned Kahn that will allow the water to go down into the soil, back into Adobe Creek purified. The air will be purified by a sustainable forest and offer it up to the community artists. The forest will be replanted at that time, and by such will sequester carbon over its lifetime, thus purifying the air that surrounds it. The solar energy that's created on site will be used for all activities, both to purify the water, to run the electricity for the bridge. So we will have an energy neutral project as well as a carbon neutral project.
The bridge itself became this very light structure, and it touches the land very lightly. So the experience of walking across the bridge is really one of floating.
One of the ways to provide the most economical span crossing is to reduce the length of the bridge. To do this, we lifted the structure to the sides, and by doing so, we allowed the structure to pass over the highway in the most minimal length of path. This reduces the overall cost of the project, and we would like to try to provide a bridge that minimizes the amount of waste for this crossing, to try to be as sustainable as possible. In fact, we would argue that our bridge has no footprint whatsoever.
As we progress as a society, ecology is not one thing pure and simple, separate from people, but in fact it's the bringing together of the two systems, quite honestly.
So that team is not here, but we can move forward with the third submission, submission C. As you can see, they're amazing designs, right? So one more.
The Palo Alto Baylands are a vast landscape, a visual feast of forms and colors, of sights and smells, a place of biological magic that happens when salt and fresh water mix. This project is located at a special spot, at the confluence of two creeks. It will connect natural and urbanized environments. And it's at the transition zone between two biomes. The flowing lines, low-profile structure, and architectural materials evoke the forms and colors of the Baylands. The result is a design that is beautiful and dramatic, yet respectful of context, timelessly modern, bird-friendly, cost-effective, and easy to construct. Let's take a virtual tour of the project. Along the Bay Trail, just north of Adobe Creek, you discover a small touchdown plaza. Native sycamores along the creek help give shape to this outdoor place. On the wetland side, rings of native plants surround the plaza and draw your eye to the baylands horizon. You might stop and sit in the shade and watch people, or wander closer to restored wetland areas, discovering how different plant species make their homes at different elevations. Perhaps you notice how the rich earth tones of the bridge structure and lighter tones of the walking surfaces are derived from colors in the natural bayland setting. You discover beautiful artwork in the plaza surface, which was inspired by shapes of local plants. The east approach structure sweeps out and up from the plaza in a dramatic, curving form that appears to float without any visible means of support over the wetlands. You are invited by this sweeping form to make your way up a gently sloping pathway. As you emerge from the riparian tree canopy, you are struck by an expansive view of the baylands. Here, the slow lane of the pathway widens to allow you to pause for a moment or sit down and rest. Small signs tell you about plants and animals that live below, how the railing is designed to avoid perching spots for predatory birds, and how the stainless steel mesh was selected to prevent bird collisions. As you reach the top, you notice that the stainless steel pipe railing on your left rises to a high point above the edge of the roadway, and then swoops down gracefully to a low point at the center of the bridge, serving both architectural and structural functions. As you enter the fenced span over the freeway, perhaps the interplay of flowing lines of the bridge structure evoke contextual landscape forms. These lines and a slight increase in width toward the center of the span shape the space, so you experience the main span as a place and not just a tunnel-like passageway. At the west end of the main span, you might choose to take stairs which swoop down to the sidewalk, or you might pause at the lookout over Barron Creek. When you reach the touchdown plaza on the west side, you notice that the lane lines and colors of the pathway extend gracefully out into the concrete scoring pattern and walking surface artwork. Indeed, the trees and grasses, architectural materials, forms, textures, and artwork which create this pedestrian-friendly urban street space on the west side all come from the bayland side, much as species intermingle at the transition zone between two biomes. Perhaps you pause at the West Touchdown Plaza to look over the creeks or sit on a bench, or you continue on the Adobe Creek Reach multi-use pathway or the bike lane along West Bayshore Road. The Moffett and Nickel SGA team is prepared to deliver a Silicon Valley landmark, a statement of Palo Alto's commitment to the natural environment, to a beautiful urban environment, and to quality of life in the Bay Area.
Okay, so we have Stephen Grover from SGA here to talk about the design.
Perfect, thank you. Please introduce yourselves and we'll set the clock for 5 minutes for you. Thank you.
Stephen Grover, project architect and engineer, and Gary Antonucci, project manager. So it appears we're the underdog in this situation, but last we checked, 70% of the public who expressed a preference at Palo Alto Online and the city's website preferred our design. And your technical advisory panel had some very favorable comments for us. That public support and the high grades from your technical panel is why we're here today, taking the time to be here, instead of working on our other bridge projects around the bay. We understand your purview here is to advise the City Council on which design to choose. In the next couple minutes, I'm going to use just two simple arguments to convince you to turn this train around and recommend our design. First one is context appropriateness. You don't need height to achieve iconic character. The Berkeley Bike Bridge, for example, is a bold presence on I-80, which that city is rightly proud of. You certainly don't need an arch 3 stories taller than that to make a statement. In fact, the Millennium Bridge in London is a low-profile suspension bridge, yet a world landmark. And the American Tobacco Trail Bridge, which I designed, is already a regional landmark, yet does not at all compete with the trees around it. Take a moment, please, to look at the images we just handed you. This form, these towers, they are special forms. They will get attention. They will be a presence on the 101. There was clearly a lot of consideration and vetting that went into your competition guidelines, particularly relating to appropriateness for the Baylands context. Explicit height limits were given, and we were directed to minimize impacts on the east side. Look how simply, minimally, yet elegantly and dramatically our design sweeps over and barely touches this habitat. So, you should recommend our design because it is more context appropriate in multiple ways. Second argument is risk. We all here understand that selecting a bridge design is not like impulse shopping at the checkout stand with disposable income. These are taxpayer dollars for public access and safety. So let's put on our responsible civil servant hats and compare risk in 4 areas. First, bird safety. These discs, what a wonderful and creative idea, but what if they don't work? Nobody wants dead birds landing on the freeway. We, on the other hand, offer a totally proven bird safety solution. Human safety. Small radius ramps that loop over themselves has not been considered best practices for bicycle and pedestrian bridge ramps for over half a century. The AASHTO and Caltrans guidelines for curves do represent our collective current understanding of the very safest geometry for these types of projects. Creative mode separation ideas should be encouraged, but they should be vetted and carefully tested before being adopted for actual projects. We offer a very well-proven, effective, safe, simple, and economical mode separation method. And in fact, Caltrans has selected me to advise them on this very subject. Second, approvability. Third, your technical panel said our design would be easiest to get approval for. They said this for good reasons. We use common and conventional materials and construction methods. Finally, cost. Again, your technical panel said our design would be most cost-effective. This is because they know that when a contractor sees simple steel girders they can lift into place with cranes, as they've done on countless other projects, rather than specialty construction methods, that bids will be lower. In 2008 dollars, the Mary Avenue Cupertino Bridge was $15 million. So, to conclude, you should recommend our design because it is more context appropriate, but also because it represents a lower risk and thus more responsible use of taxpayer resources. Thank you.
All right, so
Thank you.
do you have any additional comments that you want to add, or should we
Yes,
ask Judith to?
before I turn it over to Judith, so I forgot to mention the context of this matrix that basically it's called the comments matrix, which is the first attachment and attachment, or first page and attachment F of the packet. So how this thing, it's kind of an organic process where we were gathering comments as we were proceeding through the competition. So the technical advisory panel did not get the benefit of interviewing the teams. They actually just got the YouTube video. They got the boards and some handouts that you have, some color graphics. And so that's really the context of their comments. It really was more to assist the competition process. They posed questions. They said, well, this could be an issue. And so we kind of drafted those comments and questions so that the dialogue could continue at the competition level. And so then at the competition, we also got additional comments. And I would point out that Steve Burrows was the most experienced engineer on the team, both from the technical advisory panel context, because the technical advisory panel had construction management experience. They looked at cost. They looked a little bit on the structure, but Steve Burrows on the jury, he really had some poignant remarks about the structure, the simplistic design, and that's noted in the ARB minutes, so verbatim minutes. And essentially, he had a lot of issues with the simplistic design. He actually thought it might cost more because it's such a complex design and has no redundancy. And it kind of goes into the minutes, so I don't want to go into that too much.
Can I add one more?
Oh, Brad has a comment.
Brad Eggleston, Assistant Director of Public Works. Just to add a little bit more context even than what Elizabeth was saying about the technical advisory panel. At that convening of that group, what we were really asking the panel to do was look at the limited information they had and point out anything they saw, especially that they thought might cause very significant cost and constructability issues. We didn't hear anything like that from the panel. We tried to gather in the comments that you've seen in the memo, individual comments that were made by members of the panel, but there was no in-depth discussion or attempt to seek consensus about certain findings or comments. And one thing I wanted to point out is we were happy to hear from the members of the panel that they thought that on all of these designs where we had cost estimates that would show construction at $7.2 million or so, that while they made comments that there might be issues with any one of the designs where costs could be higher, they also thought that costs would not be significantly higher. And at this phase, the conceptual, very conceptual level of design here, we're really far too early to draw conclusions about what costs would be. But the panel members, as well, I think, as some of the statements that the jurors made, were fairly comfortable that they didn't see flaws here that were likely to lead to very inflated costs.
Thank you, Brad. That was, yes. So, and then just moving forward from the public comment perspective here on the matrix, this is by no means a consensus of what the public feels in Palo Alto. It's really just a snapshot of what the comments that we got online. We have a comment section on the website at the cityofpaloalto.org/101. There is a comment section for each submission. So there was no polling, citywide polling, SurveyMonkey or anything like that. So we don't have a consensus of what the public feels, actually. But we tried to capture what comments we did get and put that in the matrix. And essentially, that's what we tried to capture with Payback, the Palo Alto Bicycle Advisory Committee, and then the Planning Commission, where we weren't asking for a vote and we weren't asking for people to pick one versus the other. We're just trying to gather comments and bring those to the council. And hopefully that explains kind of this organic conversation we're trying to have even today. So thank you. And I guess we could, that's all I really had to say about the matrix, and we can have Judith maybe summarize, Judith Wasserman, the chair of the competition jury, summarize the findings from the December 17th competition.
Good morning. I feel a little silly because most of you were there. But I should remind you in the beginning that that these two teams are trying to sell you a bridge. So let's all be careful here. The general consensus, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong because you were there, the general consensus was that the kayak proposal, the portage proposal, was beautiful and poetic and scary because it was a wood construction, and even though it was well protected, people were worried about the maintenance and longevity of the structure, and we all wished we could find another place to put it because we all liked it so much. My general feeling, and I stated this at the jury, was that you could close your eyes and throw darts and come up good here. I was astounded at the quality and beauty and poetry of all of these proposals. You guys made your statements first before the jury did, and you almost, except for with one exception, preferred the arch structure. And I'd like to remind you, just in case anybody from the public is listening, this is not a suspension bridge. That arch is a box beam. So, and if you want details on the structure, talk to the team, but the cables are not what's holding the bridge up. They are forming the sides of the box beam. It's very interesting from a structural point of view. But that was proposed because of the council's stated preference for an iconic landmark. And your general feeling was that this was more iconic, I guess. And the jury ended up feeling pretty much the same. But it was very close, and I'm not going to make your time any easier by making any suggestions, because I think it's all good. So if you have any questions that I might answer, I'll be happy to do that. Okay.
Judith, thank you so much for all the time and effort you've put into this. It's really meaningful for our city, and we appreciate having your expertise leading this process. Thank you. All right, so with that, I think we'll go to the board for comments, and maybe we'll just work our...
Public that wants to comment too.
Amy, maybe I could just ask you, do we have a public comment period as part of this item? We should?
Yeah, it's a public meeting, so
Right.
I always encourage
So
that.
I'll open the public hearing. I don't currently have any cards from the public, and I'm not sure I see anyone from the public here to speak. I'm sorry? So if you don't mind, why don't you go ahead and come to the podium? You can speak. Give you 3 minutes to make your comments. And then when you're done, if you don't mind, if you could see Diana, she'll help you get a card and you can fill that out afterwards. But why don't you go ahead and address the board? Thank you.
Hello. Actually, I wasn't going to speak on this topic. I'm here for another reason. But since nobody from the public is going to speak, and I do have an opinion looking at all these projects. My personal opinion, aesthetically speaking, yes, first project with the arc looks kind of more prominent because it's sticking out higher. But at the same time, I would say that it's a downfall of this project. There is no reason for it to stick that high. I don't personally think it will add to the beauty of the project. And maybe it will add to the amount of the birds we'll have that on the bridge, that on the freeway. And from my personal experience with construction, I would say that it would most likely be much more costly than the third project. And the third project, if you think about the whole of Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, and highway, and what do you want from it? So personally thinking, I don't want anything to sticking out. When I'm traveling on 101, I don't want to pay too much attention to whatever is around. I want to pay attention to the road. And But for the people who walk on the bridge, third project would be better, actually. They'll just see more of the nature and less of the blinking discs and beams ahead or whatever else. And cost effective, it probably would be the best. And if you have a structural engineer, ask him what is the most safest thing. And my suspicion is that it will be the third one. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did I see someone else interested in speaking? Great. If you could give your card to Diana. Since I don't have your card, if you would announce your name, please.
Certainly.
Thank you.
My name is Carl Jones. First question is, will Palo Alto have to take the designs as is if they choose one over the other, or will the city be able to ask for changes or modifications? There are some wonderful parts of both designs that the other doesn't necessarily have. For example, one has a stairway that allows you to get down on the west side. One of the questions I sent to you all earlier was, what about a future bike path coming in from the north? Will there be the ability to make some connection later on? So that's one thing. On the other side, there's a T intersection versus a plaza and an ability to go north and south. So will the city be able to, once choosing one, be able to say, we would like this kind of modification? That's just a question. I don't know whether it can be done or not. And the other, I didn't finish writing it down before I walked up. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any other members of the public? With that, we'll close the public hearing and move back to the board for comments. So, Alex, if I might start with you, please.
So, I just wanted to add one thing to what Judith was mentioning in the summary, and I think we did have some reservations about the railing, potentially of the railings in the scheme 3. Right? Or it was just an open-ended question, right? We weren't quite sure about, about the railings and how that integrated in with the rest of the design. And so I guess for me on this one, it was, with the competition, there's a finite amount of time for the entries, and for me that was scheme A achieved more in the limited time. I see scheme C, right, has been sending us additional images that are very compelling, but from my point of view in a competition, as a juror, we're just looking at what was submitted on time, and for me that's A and not C. Not that C couldn't be equally as beautiful and well-designed as scheme A. So then that gets me down to the biggest question is really what is the role of something sort of iconic and monumental in the Baylands? And so I've been thinking about this for the last couple weeks. And I actually bicycle up and down the Bay Trail. You can go 30 miles up to Millbrae. There's a gap in Redwood City. You can go 25 miles out to Niles Canyon over the Dumbarton Bridge and Coyote Hills and Alameda Creek. You can go 42 miles down to Morgan Hill using the Bay Trail, Guadalupe River Trail, and the Coyote Trail down to Morgan Hill. You can go 30 miles to Los Gatos using Bay Trail, Guadalupe Trail, and the Los Gatos Creek Trail. There's a little gap in San Jose. But it's really very extensive. It's very beautiful. And in places like Los Gatos and San Mateo, you see just tons of people, way more people using all of the recreational amenities than you do in Palo Alto. And then that being said, there's something there about the connectivity that many of the cities have been working on. And there are no monuments. They're not monumental. They're not the Mary Street Bridge. They're not the Berkeley Bridge. I mean, it's just connecting all of this different segments and getting all of the cross-barrier connections done for a long period, for a long, a long stretch is really the most important thing, rather than creating one big monument and then hoping that everybody will come to this one little place. Because that's not really what the Bay Trail is about. It's really about connecting all of the dots. And for me, then, that in the spirit of that and what's being built elsewhere in the Bay Area, Scheme C is sort of the right, to me, the one that fits in to that grander vision, more so than Scheme A. And then on the flip side is I do actually go over the Mary Street Bridge several times a month. And it draws in pedestrians just for like an after dinner stroll through the neighborhood. People use it. They go out at sunset, and it is a destination. And it's just crossing a freeway. There's not even any scenic beauty. The beauty is the bridge and the sky on its own. And there's definitely something there. I mean, it is a magnet. And so, I mean, there is a role for monuments in there. But I have to say, when I'm out there in the Baylands, like running along the trail, the monumental scale is actually something like Moffett Field airport hangars. It's not, when you're out in the Baylands, something grand is actually even bigger than what this bridge is, the Scheme A bridge is. So anyway, it's a tough decision. I'd be happy with either one.
Let me ask a quick question, maybe of Judith, if you don't mind. Are you looking for us to describe a preference today, to give some ranking to help provide guidance to council? Or are you looking to, or Elizabeth, are you interested in us being clear with you about number 1, number 2, number 3 in terms of preference for us?
I mean, if you can feel compelled to do another ranking or to revisit that, that's fine. I just was hoping to get additional comments based on your thoughts. This is it's a lot to think about. They're beautiful designs, and I was hoping to glean some more information, some thoughts to convey to council. I wasn't expecting a vote and revisiting the design competition again, but
I'm not suggesting we should vote, but I do think that the role of the Architecture Review Board is to provide advice and counsel to the city council. And they look to us as their expertise on character and quality and aesthetics. And so I think that in particular, in those areas, it's important for this board to be clear about what we are describing and what we are intending in our discussion here today, so that when this goes to council, there's information that they can really hold on to, tangibly discuss, and use as a component of their decision-making process. So I'm hopeful that's what our board would do today, but if...
I do have actually one small thing to say on that subject. I think that the decision the council makes will be based on a set of values. The values that were set up in the competition may no longer be the values of this new council. So I think they would benefit from the most descriptive analysis that you can give. I'm not sure that a ranking would be as useful as what Elizabeth has set up as the pros and cons, and I think Alexander actually really said it very well. This bridge does this and gives you this experience. This bridge does that and gives you a different experience. What does this council want? And that kind of analysis, I think, would be extremely helpful to them. I don't think we should make their lives really easy.
All right, Catherine, go ahead.
So I believe I am the one exception to whatever general consensus may have existed in the December meeting amongst the ARB members that were present at that meeting. And my preference is for the low-profile bridge. And just to clarify for the record, I think it's important to recognize that the city may have not done the competition too much of a service when they just presented them as submission A and submission B and submission C, because the comments on the website then come in, well, I like the first one or I like the third one, and it's not consistent. So the lack of universal nomenclature, I think, has presented some sort of communication difficulties, which I would suggest some attention be given to that before this goes to council, to make clear that we have, in his remarks, we have, submission A on your document, but it's also known as the high arch, or it's also known as submission 1. And I think that needs to be clarified and consistent, so that we don't have, for scheme 3, we have references to scheme 3 or submission 3 or the third one, or low profile. So there's 4 names for the same thing. My alignment with the low profile bridge is a aggregation of my sense of what the community direction is, but it's mostly rooted in the consistency of design C, or the low profile bridge, with the original brief, the original design brief. And I think this document that was just submitted, that has a comparison of the tall arch / submission 1 with the low profile, really clearly articulates the difference between those two designs with respect to significant pieces, the visual impact, the cost and constructability. We know that's sort of a crapshoot at this point, but I think that document bears some study, particularly the visual impact differences between what the guideline was provided by the city and how it was met, right? In one case, we have 88 feet above the freeway, and in another case, we have 34 feet above the freeway with respect to the maximum height was originally told to be 35 feet. So that's an example. I would suggest also that really, in the grand scheme of things, it's a great privilege to be able to build a second pedestrian bike bridge in South Palo Alto. And I wonder if, with respect to Judith Wasserman's insightful comment about the new council values may or may not be the same as the council values that were informing the original design brief. But I question, in connection with board member Lou's comment about the Baylands, the beauty of the Baylands is low profile elegance. The Baylands need to speak for themselves. I wonder about this. I mean, in the value of Bridge 1 is it is definitely iconic. But I question whether you're driving along a highway, if you come to an iconic bridge, oh, I must be in Palo Alto now. When really I think the point of, does iconic really need to be an attribute? Or is it really just a product of Palo Alto ego? And is the point of the bridge to transport people in a wow, I'm on this beautiful bridge, but really I'm gonna open you this vista of low profile beauty and elegance. So I would conclude my remarks by recognizing that I feel there's a clear preference for the submission C, which is the low profile bridge.
Thank you very much. Board Member Guyer.
Pardon me?
Vice Chair Guyer.
That's okay, I'm not that. I agree with everything that's been said here, basically, that, we sit at the discretion of the city council and to assist them, and I think it's our purview to come up with what is good design. Good design is dependent on what the final or what the final product is expected to be or anticipated to be, and I think that's where the two schemes, both I think are very nicely done. It's just that they reach a conclusion from different areas and actually come up with a different conclusion based on their assumption of what the requirements were. the term iconic's been thrown around, and I agree that if it's a term for if it's something that it's for the beauty of the bridge itself or the iconic statement for the city of Palo Alto, then I think the first scheme, the high arch, if you want to call it, I think does that better than, or meets that criteria better in its solution. If you want the concept to be where we want it to be very subtle, low-keyed, delicate, then the third submission, the cable structure, I call it, has, meets, I think, that classification better. So I'm glad you said we don't really want to pick one, but I think that's the reality also that, as you mentioned, the new council may have a total different concept of what they feel they're looking for. And so for us to say we want A or B or C is kind of tough. All we can suggest is, and I think was mentioned by Judith, if this is what you're looking for, then this is the solution, or if this is what you're looking for, this is the solution. Because I think both of them have good design for what the proposal that they were coming from. And so I think it's a situation, I think we'd be doing, or the service we could do to the council is, you folks know what you're looking for. If it's this, you pick this. If it's that, you pick that. And I think that's as close as we can get.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, thank you both teams for presenting again and coming back. I really think that most of everything I've wanted to say has been covered and hasn't really changed since our last month's meeting. Having said that, just an advice to the council, I think that Scheme A is much more about the experience of crossing the bridge, and it appeals maybe more to people outside of Palo Alto because of that landmark significance that it would bring, and it's more attention to the bridge than necessarily attention towards the Baylands. Not saying that it does any disrespect to the Baylands, but I think Scheme C, the way that the bridge has been designed is much more about turning the focus to the Baylands rather than to the bridge itself. And maybe it's more something that is relevant to Palo Altans or people that are very aware of the Baylands, where they simply want to get across, and it's really the Baylands that's the focus. I think another comment that I wanted to make was the way that the bridges touch the ground. Speaking from an architectural design sense and aesthetic sense, I took particular notice to how Bridge A touches the ground. It's a very continuous structure that continues on into the ground, whereas Scheme C seems to have more of separated columns that lift the bridge up. And to me, I think Scheme A kind of deals with that connection back to the ground a little bit more smoothly, because it is just a continuous bridge that happens to be on the ground, while as I see C being much more lifted above the ground, but at the same time being much more subtle while it is up in the ground, that it doesn't have necessarily a big arch, but that it is very subtle and smooth and sophisticated on its own. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Kim. Okay, so unfortunately, I was not able to attend the, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, did you have something you want to say? I saw you catching your
Well, I just had a thought about the guidelines. I just wanted to point out that the design guidelines really wasn't an instruction manual. I know it talked about height and relative height. There's a height guideline on the east side relative to the Baylands side. I mean, the east and the west side, they have different heights, right? So I just wanted to point out that the guidelines is really, it's not the hard and fast rule, and neither are the guiding principles. It was just to inspire basically the competitors to come up with a vision based on the criteria that we've provided. There's guidelines, rules. Right? It's not. Right. Thank you.
I understood that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So as I was saying, I unfortunately was not able to attend the discussion when this came to the jury, but I do feel that the city has done a great job of placing all the information on the website, and I was able to thoroughly follow along here. And I'll say that one of the things that I've focused on myself is something that Board Member Kim brought up, which has to do with the question of, is it a crossing experience or is it a Baylands experience, and you know, what are we trying to achieve? It's not just one thing, it's a balance of all of these things. But you know, if I was to make my comments relative to the way this this matrix that you're passing around has been set up, where we're sort of talking pros and cons for each of them. For me, for submission A, first of all, I love the idea that it's a one-night installation. I think, you know, their concept about constructability is very clever, and particularly in light of last weekend and what went on with the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, this kind of, you know, very rapid construction and short closure makes a lot of sense. But more than that, for me, I really love the integrated design of the arch, the way the deck platform and the protective fencing and the arch all come together. For me, is very elegant. It is quite tall. I'm a bit concerned about the tight curve, but neither of those for me are concerns that override my appreciation of the design. I did want to ask, and you can follow up with this if you don't have the information, but did Jeff Seltzer or someone from his group comment on the tightness of the curve? Was that a problem? Was it a benefit? It seems that there are some recommendations about the curves, but the use of the 42-foot radius seems pretty intentional here in order to slow people down and control movement.
So I did not speak with Jeff, this bicycle advocate here in Palo Alto, but we went to Payback, and they thought all the designs were fine. I mean,
Perfect.
They didn't say one versus the other was better.
Perfect, that's great. So for me, I'm focused on this idea of an iconic statement, but also safety and functionality and durability and maintenance and aesthetics and all of these other things. And I'm going to just say that if it's more difficult or not to build it, that's not a factor for me. I think that can be managed, and sometimes the most difficult thing is the thing that's worth doing, right? In terms of submission B, I think that it's impressive. It's impressive in its efficiency. It's impressive in its sustainability focus. I think it's just beyond beautiful. I mean, really just a really exceptional design. I'm concerned that it's in the wrong place. I think that you know, the intricacy of all the wood members and the durability of those wood members in a freeway situation where it's going to have trucks and diesel exhaust and all of those things going will override the beauty of that in a very short period of time. And I would love to see a bridge like this built someplace in the Baylands where there isn't traffic moving by it all the time. It's so compatible with the environment, and it really is about the Baylands experience, but it seems totally incompatible with the freeway to me. So that takes me to submission C, which is slender and sleek and subtle and really elegant in so many ways. But for me, there's a huge number of unknowns about this one in terms of what the ultimate product would be. As I read through the documentation, and I'm concerned about the engineering and some of these other things. You know, the thing that immediately triggers in my mind is, I don't know if you've all had this experience, but when you're in the Louvre and you walk up and down the I.M. Pei spiral stair, and it's this, you know, it's this beautiful, elegant, sweeping stair, and it is so uncomfortable to walk on because it's like a spring, right? You don't want to be on it. It's beautiful, it's great to look at, but you don't want to be on it. And I'm worried that that's where we're going to end up with this one. It's so slender and sleek, and I'm worried it's just going to be uncomfortable and move all over the place. I also have to say that the lack of integration of the elements on submission C for me, the protective fence and the way it's sort of planted on, the wood panels are sort of planted on in this fencing element that rides up and down, and the protective fence doesn't really relate to it. And there's all of these things that, to me, are sort of incompatible with this really sleek, slender, integrated pathway. And so for me, that's really an overriding issue that takes me away from being interested in C. And so, you know, unfortunately, I'm left with saying, I really wish we had had the fourth option, right? I think that we would have all really benefited from one more. We are where we are. But I'll get that one last jab in there and then move on. But rather than ranking these, I'll leave my comments as they are, just to say that, as you said, I don't think height is a criteria here. I think it's a guideline. I think that what we should be looking at is the guidelines that were established, and I'm hopeful that the council will follow through with what was set in place rather than trying to reevaluate and redesign the process. I think we have achieved something really significant in terms of this competition. I want to note my appreciation for all of your effort and the effort on behalf of your staff. It's really remarkable what we've got in front of us here today, and I think we are on a really spectacular path to having something amazing added to the fabric of our city. And so that's all the comments I had. Does anyone want to add anything, or are there any closing comments that anyone wanted to make?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment, and maybe I'm going back on what I said earlier, is the idea that in our profession, or at least in my profession, I hire consultants to solve a solution or something like that, and then have them give me a recommendation of, you know, pick 1, 2, or 3, not so much even in a ranking, but at least a suggestion. And to a certain extent, we could look as our role in the overall scheme of things as a consultant to the city council. And I don't know if we're doing the council a disservice by saying, well, you know, you guys pick what you want based on what your criteria is. I think maybe they may want to, you know, we don't have to say we think one is better than the other, but, you know, we could say our suggestion is something like that. So, I mean, like I said, that is pretty much, you know, the opposite of what I indicated, but having second thoughts about it, I think, you know, one of our requirements is to assist the, you know, theoretically the layman, if you want to call it, the non-design professional. That's what we are, is from a design standpoint, based on these criteria, that we feel, you know, the scheme, whatever, is more successful.
So are you going to pick one?
If it was that up to me, I'd pick 1, or I'd pick A, the large arch. I think it does more what I think, and basically similar to the same sort of things that you discussed earlier.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else? Catherine, I think you had some comments.
This is to Elizabeth. I'm concerned about the representation of the data stream to the city council. I know that we're trying to help them and give them a one-page summary, but this is a whole lot of feedback on one page, and I'm not sure that it's particularly representative because of the reduced format. So I wonder if I would suggest some clarifications. For example, in row 3, when you say public, I initially responded to that thinking that was public works instead of that was actually the general public. So you might want to add the word general there. And I was wondering if maybe you could put in some sort of hyperlink and document more fully, for example, link to the minutes of this meeting, for example, so that those who are interested in the actual, rather than 3 lines that try to capture the sentiment of an hour-and-a-half discussion, that they can actually see the struggle.
Alex, please.
I do want to add one comment that has not been made yet, which is when you're trying to use one of these bicycle bridges in the Bay Area, they're not necessarily easy to find. You know, sometimes they'll put them right next to an arterial street, so it's, you know, you see it and you pass by it, and so you sort of know it's there. But a lot of times they're not, and they're off somewhere else. And here, like Fabian Way and East Meadow Circle, this is not like a widely traversed part of town. And and I think we've got this new Adobe, what do we call it? The additional path, connector path from East Meadow, right? That's a
The
separate
Reach
project.
Trail, some
Yeah,
people have
yeah.
called it that, the Adobe Reach Trail.
Yeah, so it's not, the current location of the bridge on the Palo Alto side, right, on the West Bayshore side, that is not an easy place to navigate to by bicycle or if you're a pedestrian. And I would actually think I might argue that Scheme A with the height is better for wayfinding to that location. I think there are a lot of bridges that you know, like there's one in Menlo Park, which I was trying to find for years. I had never really quite figured out exactly where it is because it's behind Lindenwood and, you know, it's buried. I've led bicycle rides in San Mateo, and we used like this, there's one at Monte Diablo Avenue, and some of my group got separated and they never found it. Like they couldn't find the bridge. They were like a couple blocks away, but they could never even ever see it because it's all buried within, it's all hidden with surrounding buildings. And so I think that, you know, it's important. You know, I never knew that the undercrossing there, I never knew it was there. And I had passed by it a million times on the Bayland side, but it was so low key. It was just like a little opening in the chain link fence, right? I mean, I never even thought to go under it. So I think there's a role for height in wayfinding.
Or you just reserve $1 million of the budget for signage.
Hopefully not. Okay. So unless we have anything further, let's return back to, I'm sorry, I'm getting waved. Are you a member of the public? So I'm sorry that the comment period for the public has already been closed today. I understand, but it's not possible for you to speak now. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. We're not going to take that comment now. Thank you. If we could go back to the staff. Thanks.
I just had one more comment I wanted to make in response to the question the member of the public, Mr. Jones, raised earlier about whether there would be an opportunity to make changes in the future to these designs, or if whichever one that the city council chooses, we would have to take as is. And just to point out that we will be eventually going through a full design process that's going to involve the city's site and design review. So whichever design we end up working with is going to have all the shots as usual to make changes and try to make it the very best that it can be.
So in respect to additional public comment, I think there's plenty of opportunity for the public to come forward. I think there's a way for people to make comments on the website, if I remember right, and lots of ways for the public to interact about this. And you know, certainly to anyone who's watching today or anyone who reads about this, I'll hope that if you have comments, you add your voice to the discussion. I think you know that's all we've got to say about this. Did you have some closing comments, Elizabeth?
I just wanted to remind people out there that the website does have all schemes. So website is cityofpaloalto.org/101, like the freeway 101. And you can see the YouTube videos. You can click on each design, and then there's a comment form. And so we're gathering those. There's not a huge amount of comments. I think that's in your packet. It's one of the attachments in attachment F. And we encourage the public to comment along the way, just like what we're doing today. It's just organic process trying to like ruminate on these designs, and hopefully it will convey a message to the council to, so we have a public art commission, I believe on the 22nd, and the Park and Rec Commission is, what is it, the Tuesday? It's the last Tuesday of the month. I'm sorry, I don't have that right now. 27th. So I encourage the public to attend those two meetings, and then finally the council meeting on February 23rd.
Terrific.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
very
very much. So with that, we'll close the item and move on to our next, and give the applicant a chance to come up and get their presentation in place and So do you want to take 5 minutes? All right, great. So we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene. Thank you.
Oh, it was for the monitor. Oh, okay. I saw it over there. Okay, great.
If everyone can take their seats, we'll get quiet in the chamber and begin our next item. All right, so we will reopen the meeting and move on to item number 2 on our agenda, which is 429 University Avenue. Request by Ken Hayes Architects Incorporated on behalf of Kipling Post LP for architectural review of a proposal to demolish 2 existing 1-story commercial retail buildings with a total of 11,633 square feet and construction of a 31,407 square foot 4-story mixed-use building with 2 levels of underground parking, providing 40 on-site spaces on an 11,000 square foot site in the downtown commercial CDC GFP zoning district. The environmental assessment, initial study and draft mitigated negative declaration public review period was November 17th, 2014 through December 12, 2014. The hearing of this item was continued from the December 18th, 2014 ARB meeting to this date. So with that, we'll turn to staff for a presentation.
Thank you for the introduction and good morning, board members. In regards to the project in front of you, this is the second formal hearing for 429 University Avenue. The project remains as described and there are no changes to floor area and land use program. The first ARB formal hearing took place on November 20th, 2014. During the hearing, comments were received from public testimony and ARB members in relation to the architectural design of the project. Some of the major comments are outlined in page 1 and 2 in the staff report. Since the last hearing, the project has been revised to address the aesthetic concerns. The applicant has prepared a presentation to detail these changes. Since the packet distribution last week, staff has received additional public comments. The correspondence are provided at place for your consideration today. The public review period as described for SEQA was held from November 17, 2014 through December 12, 2014. During this period, the draft initial study, mitigated negative declarations, and the background study were made available for public review and comments. Staff has not received written comments and verbal testimony from the public hearing on November 20th, 2014. Heather Mantanelli is here today to answer any SEQA-related questions you may have. In addition, staff has noted minor error in the preamble sections of the mitigation monitoring program. The revised preamble is presented place. The revision does not affect the content of the mitigation monitoring program. That concludes staff reports.
So I should note that there is a member of the public here who apparently needs to leave. And so we're going to go just a bit out of order and allow them to speak first, and then we'll go to the presentation of the applicant. So I'm sorry, I don't know which card is yours. So if you could announce your name, please, and then we'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
I appreciate it. My name is Timur Belier. My name is Timur Belier, and I'm speaking in support of the project. My family moved to Palo Alto in 1981. I went to school in Palo Alto, eventually graduating from Palo Alto High School and moving on to study architecture at Berkeley. After I graduated, I took a job in Palo Alto at Young & Borlick Architects, and that's when I met the Wongs about 10 years ago. In my experience, the Wongs have been a positive influence in Palo Alto, successful developers with a taste for what can work in Palo Alto, especially in downtown. They're people who have a vested interest in making Palo Alto better. The proposed design, as you can all see, is fantastic. The Hayes Group has a fantastic track record in Palo Alto designing outstanding projects. Mediocre designers just do not stay in Palo Alto. I don't think that we should stand in the way of progress, especially responsible, well-executed progress. some people have argued that this building is too massive or too tall or creates canyon-like alleys. You know, in Palo Alto, what street other than University is better suited for high density? You know, this is not sitting in a residential area. This is exactly where it ought to be. Palo Alto can clearly use more rentable area, more parking, more housing. As the next Yahoo, Google, and Facebook try to start up here, let's not stand in their way. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you not to be swayed by voices against reasonable development. I urge you to approve this design as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. And so with that, we'll turn to the applicant for a presentation. And we'll set our clock for 10 minutes. Mr. Hayes, as soon as you're ready, we'll get started.
Thank you, Board Member Pop. Good morning. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'll be presenting on behalf of my client, Kipling Post, LP. Before I start, let me just, I want to thank the planner, Christy Fong, and the chief planner, Amy French, for really assisting us in getting this back to you. We couldn't quite make the December date just because of the extent of the revisions. As we recall, the site is the corner of Kipling and University Avenue. The surrounding context consists of 1, 2, 4, and 6-story buildings, kind of both across the street and kind of in the same general on the side of University Avenue. The site's 11,000 square feet. It combines the two properties. There's been no change to the program since our last hearing, as Ms. Fong pointed out. We still have ground floor retail. We have a second floor of office space. We have a third floor of 3 apartments, or apartments. We have a 4th floor of 1 apartment and some commercial office space and rooftop terrace. Below grade, the 2 levels of underground parking, although there's been some reconfiguration because of the changes. We have 40 parking spaces, 5 in excess of what the requirement is at this point. This is just some views of the context. Shady Lane, we're all familiar with that, the existing building. From University Avenue, the Giants Dugout store located here, the former Apple store on that side. This is the back alley condition. These trees are all being removed, and the sidewalk curb and gutters all being redone along Kipling. On the ground floor, the changes primarily in plan anyway have to do with what we've done here on the back corner where the alley is. The first thing is we removed that parking space that we had here, and we put bike parking in this area protected under the building. We've relocated the entry, which was formerly about here, and flipped it with the stair to address some of the comments from the neighbors on Kipling and yours as well. When that resulted in the reconfiguration of the lobby, the elevator, and sort of this general area, we've also added a transition planter kind of as the building wraps the corner now. And even though it's commercial on this side of the street, it is a nice transition to that lower scale commercial. And then I believe the entry here was formerly here, and so it's relocated there. We still have the multiple entrances along University Avenue. And so the majority of the changes took place there in plan. There were also some changes on the second floor, and I'll just show you that later. Your comments from the initial hearing or in November, the overall mass seems out of scale with the immediate context. The idea of layering grids that I had talked about to reduce scale is perhaps not strong enough. Relate better to the University Avenue facade street rhythm. The elevator and stair element on Kipling seemed out of scale, does not transition well to the scale of the buildings on Kipling, and possibly study other options for the corner and provide design input. I think this was Board Member Goodyear's comment on the alley elevation. So we've addressed these, and I'd like to show you in how we've done that. I want to talk about the mass, the rhythm, the scale, and the setback of the building. So this is the prior proposal, and the big move was this block that kind of defined the building and reinforced the street context. And so what we've done is reduce the block in height by about 6 inches and an equal amount at the bottom. So that block has gotten smaller vertically, and then pulled back about 30 feet of it from the left side to create less mass there and get this more in scale, I think, with University Avenue. In terms of the rhythm, what it's done is it's really opened up the opportunity here to create a rhythm now. We've added additional elements on the block to reinforce that rhythm, and that's carried down to the ground floor, although we had that previously. In terms of the scale, the move of having that secondary grid that we had here to help kind of reduce the scale, because at this point it steps back to a balcony. So there is a break in the building at that point, but we thought it would be interesting to take that and really strengthen it now, and we've pulled it through the building to the left side here, and that you'll see in the street context provides a nice transition now to the remaining buildings on the block. In terms of setback, the portion up here is set back from this facade about 26 feet. So it's not even in the University Avenue street context. This portion here is set back, this portion here is set back 40 feet, and this portion sort of is somewhere around, I believe, 12 feet set back. So it creates a terrace effect here, and each of those terraces is for the residences that step back at that area. Up at this level, it creates that roof terrace that we have that is afforded to the commercial tenant. On Kipling, the same changes were made to that block because the block wraps the building and reinforces the corner. So we've reduced the mass of that block, but really focused attention back here as well, and took it from a 50-foot stair tower, elevator tower, and a structural glazed glass wall with a cutout in it to a continuation of that two-story element that wraps through and around the building. We flipped these, as I discussed earlier, creating the new lobby here for the upper floors. This is an outside lobby, if you will, terrace that accesses the office level at the second floor, and then at the third floor that accesses the residential units. So this is really broken down the scale, or the mass rather, of this corner. The stair has been reduced and moved. I believe it's at 42 feet now, whereas before it was at 50 feet. This syncopation is, again, strengthened as it wraps the corner, creating the rhythm that is more in scale with the streetscape, and that occurs here, and the relocation of that stair has also afforded us to make that change as well. The scale, I think I've mentioned, we want to wrap that two-story element around to provide a transition to the scale of the buildings on Kipling. In terms of setback, this facade here at the fourth floor is about 12 feet back. We've moved it back an additional 6 feet from where it was before, from this facade here, and then this is between the two. This balcony that comes across is about 6 feet back from here and 6 feet in front of that facade, which is 12 feet back. So we really think that we've reduced the mass. We've created this rhythm that's more consistent, I think, in what we were looking for. I think this process invariably results in architecture that's better informed and a better project. So we're happy with these changes that we've made. The alley elevation, this is the prior elevation. You can see how we've changed this here. The entry, this is Kipling on the left. The planter wraps around the entry. There's frameless glass here on the ground floor, the open balcony at the second floor. On the back of the building, this is all now balcony for the offices. So instead of having a window wall at that location, this is now all recessed back with a glass railing to it's kind of unique to introduce activity on the alley. I think there's not been much of that in the downtown except at 250 University at Centennial Alley. The upper floor, the third floor apartments also has that similar setback as we had before. And then the fourth floor is set back even further, and there's balconies out on the back side there. This is the area that's had the car removed, and so we have the bike lockers located in that area, so a little bit more accessible, I think, to the entry and for the residents' use. This is the elevation that faces the block. This is the prior, where we had just the one cut through. Of course, we don't have this framework here any longer. That's about 30 feet pushed back here. And so what we have now is the glass rail that returns, and then the building basically steps up like that as it steps back from University Avenue. The street context, you can see the University Avenue composition and how this basically steps down to the 1.5-story buildings in the remaining portion of the block. And then this is the view at Kipling, where again, the 2-story element exposes itself here and drops down to the ground floor to provide that transition to the rest of the commercial buildings on that block. This gives you an idea of the image. I think you were provided with the renderings. Yeah, you have those? Okay. So this shows the rendering from University, and then the rendering from Kipling. The materials are all what we had proposed before, which were generally supported by the board. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see. Do we want to return back to the board here? I'm sorry?
Were there other public comments, or?
I was going to suggest that we could go back to the, I forget the order that we do this in New Year. We go back to technical questions now, and then we return to the public. Is that correct?
That's typically what,
yeah. Right, that's what I thought. Okay. So, Board Member Ballantyne, let's begin with you.
So, Christy, thank you for your work. I had a question about the utility area that you're referencing on page 5, the access to the utility area on the Kipling side. This is a covered space, correct?
To board member, yes.
And is there any technical reason that dictates the placement of those long-term bicycle racks, bicycle storage units?
The placement of the bicycle rack has to have a minimum 3 feet distance from the electric board along the wall there.
Okay. And is there also any technical reason for having to place the billiards rather than some sort of landscape planter that would echo the landscape planter on the corner of Kipling?
There's no technical reason why not having landscape planter instead of ballers.
Thank you. My next question refers to the public art portion of your report, which is page 4, where you invite the ARB to provide comments to the extent of the visibility of the wall shown for the public art. So, you know, when I think of the word public, I think of, for example, the egg at Lytton Plaza is definitely public art. It's right in the middle of a plaza. Is there any precedent for private lobby space to be considered public display space?
So we have the public arts manager here actually that may answer your questions. So maybe I can introduce her, Elsie. So maybe she can answer more about the public arts.
Right, so I know that there's been some sort of discussion on visibility through, I'm wondering if that is well established.
Welcoming here. Okay. Elise.
Hi, I'm Elise DeMarzo. I'm the manager of the public art program for the city of Palo Alto. As you may know, the public art and private development ordinance just went into effect last January, so this is our 1-year anniversary. And there has indeed been a lot of discussion about how public the artwork is. So the requirement, as outlined in the ordinance, is that it has to be accessible to the public a minimum of 40 hours per week. So, so definitely there's been some discussion back and forth with lobbies. How public is it? Would the public know whether or not they are invited to enter and experience the artwork, or if there has to be a certain amount of effort to find the artwork. So that has been a topic that's been very much under discussion with the Public Art Commission.
So in that discussion, is there any sort of trending for, because I see them as completely different. When I go to Mitchell Park and I see the sculpture out in the front, that's public art. When I walk by a lobby that has a security person and a receptionist sitting in there, I don't think that I'm invited in. So I think it's a valid discussion to be having. I'm not sure that we're equipped really to address it on this particular case.
So when the project did come to the Public Art Commission previously for their initial review, some of the commissioners did voice some concern about how public that space was, that the members of the public who are walking down Kipling Street may not necessarily feel invited or entitled to enter into that lobby space. So that was a discussion that came up with the commission previously.
Was there any conclusion to this discussion? How is it left? How is it summarized? Or
Well, the applicant does have to come back to the Public Art Commission with a final art plan showing the artwork and the placement of the artwork prior to getting final approval.
Right.
And the way the ordinance is written, they cannot receive their building permit until they've received that final approval for the artwork and the placement.
Thank you.
Board Member Goyer? Board Member Kim? Board Member Liu?
I have a question for staff. This is on TDMs. So I think there's a TDM requirement in the conditions of approval on the planning side. And then I think, if I read correctly in the environmental report, it was saying that there is no TDM required for the project. And so I may have been misreading something, but I was wondering if you could clarify what's happening on this project.
So in the secret documentations, there currently no TDM program in place, but as a condition of approval, the applicant is requested to provide one, especially for the utilizations of bicycle parking and also for public transit riderships.
Okay, so we're saying this is voluntary? Wait, I didn't quite understand. Or it's just you're just requesting it just because it's downtown?
Typically, a TDM program, it comes with a request for a reduction in parking. That's what we've seen most of the time. In this case, it would be voluntary, so it's not an imposition of a mitigation.
Great, thank you.
And I only have one question for staff at this point. What level of control or conditioning can we impose on a project in regard to the use of residential terraces on University Avenue, and what can be stored on them, how they look, how they appear? I'm in favor of the terraces. I think that that'll be lovely space for the people who use those units, but I'm very concerned about residential clutter on University Avenue and what that's going to look like. So could you advise a little bit about what our role is and how we might control that?
Yes, I would say that because the applicant has proposed not a condo situation, often what we would have is a CC&R type document that would talk about the use of the residential open area.
But we don't have that here.
But we don't have that here. Right. So I just thought I would start with that just because we don't have that. So that's not a tool. And it's awkward because your purview is the design of the building and not really the ongoing use of those areas. So I think to the extent that the design is going to enable clutter or not is kind of the area that you would want to focus on. So I don't think there's a possibility to put a condition that it shall remain free and clear of clutter.
Okay. All right, that's great. I'll get to you. we'll get there. Let me go back to the public period, and then we'll address it in the comments as we go forward. I just wanted a technical clarification about what the role is. Of course.
So this is a question, I believe, Dave Doctor, we have you present. This is a question really to you as the city arborist. I was wondering if you might just confirm for us that the tree protections that are described in the tree protection plan, particularly for those London plane trees being retained on University Ave, whether or not you feel that that is completely sufficient to sustain them during the construction period when they're digging this big hole right next to their root zone.
Thank you. Yes, that's a concern to us too, and we have adequate provisions to control any pruning or erection of scaffolding for the London planes. The trunk will be protected. It's out in the D-shaped island, separate from the sidewalk. But the project arborist will provide an updated tree protection report before the building permit is issued. So we'll have a chance to go over every nuance that may occur to the London planes. We would not allow heavy cutting on one side, on the building side, just for the temporary reason of scaffolding or getting the thing built. So I think the shape of the two London planes will be still intact. Not I think, I know.
Okay, so do we have any way to condition that if they don't survive within year 1 to 3, that they are required to then be replaced with exactly the matching at the cost to the applicant?
If there was mortality of one of those London planes, that would be a huge, significant impact that we would, that won't happen. If the trees actually are growing, the root area along University Avenue, it's not just surviving in that little planter area. They're very deeply rooted underneath the existing paving, the asphalt of the roadway.
Right, but we're cutting down one side very deeply.
On the back of sidewalk, there will be a deep basement, and for the garage. And the shoring will not allow, we won't allow a lot of cutback. It'll be a vertical shoring scenario, and we wouldn't expect the London plane roots to be growing in the back of the sidewalk area anyway. The existing foundation is kind of a impediment to the London plane roots, I think, right now. They've been growing for 28, 30 years.
The fact that there's an existing building there now in roughly the location where the cut will be made and the shoring will be placed is consistent with other projects that we've seen, and I think that Dave's indicating that he's comfortable with the placement and the organization of the structure.
Yeah, just to clarify, the parking garage, removal of roots at the level of parking garage would be insignificant to the trees. Even if there were root pruning, which there probably will be some, it's not a significant mortality issue with the London planes at all. Just general sidewalk repair does worse things in town than this project will impact these two London planes.
Okay, my concern was really, if there is a mortality, then what? That's really my concern, but we can move on and maybe address that.
They would be replaced. If a tree died, it would be replaced with the value of the tree discussed and required of the applicant. Because the mortality would be a very unusual event. I mean, that would be a serious, unexpected element.
Okay, Amy, did you have?
Yes, I just wanted to add, the mitigation monitoring program does contain a bullet there about performance evaluation criteria with respect to trees. So, we could beef that up if need be, but, it says field inspections conducted to verify adherence to conditions. So, over what time period? Typically, a 2-year period would be, to establish the growth of the trees, Dave, I believe. But, yeah. Yes. So we keep our eye on the trees for an extended period beyond completion of the construction.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll open the public comment period. And I'd like to first call Vita Gorbunova, and then we'll have Michael Harbour. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If anyone else here from the public wishes to speak, please fill out a public speaker card and get that into us as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Hello. I totally can understand the reasons for the Wong's family to push this project forward. I can totally understand for architect's reasons. He's paid for it. It's his job. So I urge the city council to keep the comments, to consider them with a grain of salt. It's their job. Family really wants to maximize a bang for the buck. Architect is doing his job, and he's apparently pretty good in pushing pretty big buildings everywhere in Palo Alto. I don't know if it's to attest to his ability as an architect or to his other abilities. And I could see that they did the modification to the plan, and from the big box it becomes a big deconstructed box. But I don't even think that it makes sense to talk about the aesthetics of box versus non-box of this project. Even if it would be a palace with all the bells and whistles every resident of Palo Alto was considered beautiful, it's still so out of place and out of scale. So hopefully, city as a city council, who basically is supposed to be our representatives, I hope you will hear me out. I can consider myself as an expert in it. I live 2 blocks from here in downtown Palo Alto. I walk by this particular site every morning, back and forth, sometimes several times. So I know Kipling very well. I know this particular site very well. And I had lived around in downtown Palo Alto for 15 years, and I was looking in our downtown, which is mostly nice because of all the vitality Stanford students bring in. So let's face it, it's not the most beautiful downtown in the neighboring cities. It's mostly beautiful because of people. And if you walk on University Avenue, you would definitely notice how the sense of this vitality drains when you walk by these big buildings. Just look across the street from this particular site. You will have the 4-story high building, and you will see that it's in front of it's kind of empty. And when I was on my way here to the hearing, I walked by the site again, and I can say that in the morning, the west side of the university was already getting some sun, and it was very nice looking. Am I minutes up? I'm sorry. So, but basically, look on the other side. This building was in the shade, was casting its shade on the other side. We'll just lose the downtown.
If you could wrap up, please.
Okay, I can wrap up it easily. I noticed that this building never shown in the context of the neighboring buildings, except this photo strip of the facades.
I'm sorry, we have 3 minutes for you, and you've used your time. If you can just
look at the photo strip. If you need to do this same photo strip with proposed building, this photo strip will have to be 2.5, 3 times higher.
I'm sorry, we're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so Michael Harbour, and that's the last card I have today. Again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. Hi, good morning. I'm Michael Harbour.
Thank you.
I own the building at 421, 423 Kipling Street. And I just want to remind you that Kipling is such a unique street for all of downtown Palo Alto. It is lined by Victorian homes that are both being used as residences and offices. And it's a thorough way between University Avenue and to Johnson Park. It does have a very unique sense when walking down it. The other it's only 29 feet wide, which makes it much different than all the other major thoroughfares like Bryant and Waverly, yet still have the same zoning height restrictions. So when you put a 50-foot building on the corner of a 29-foot street, it has a much different sense than if you're building on Waverly, like a parking structure. So if they build this, the building itself by itself is a lovely building. I have no problem with the architecture. But on a different corner, it would make a lot different sense. When you put it there on this little tiny narrow street, which essentially acts as a one-way street, if you've ever tried to go down 2 cars, you can't do it. One has to stop, one has to go, and you go around each other. I've been hit on that street twice. I've had my side mirrors side-swiped. You start putting, 4 stories of people working in this building. It's just not going to work for that. And you haven't even considered the building that's right across the street, which is the old Apple store. What happens when they want to build a 4-story building? Now you have this huge corridor effect on this little tiny street. It just doesn't make sense. So I just, call to your attention that although the zoning may be the same and they're working within the guidelines, 29 feet does not equal 49 feet for this most unique street in Palo Alto. If I had my way, we would designate, Kipling Street as Victorian Way and give it special designation because it's so unique. At the last meeting, Mr. Hayes talked about these buildings as just being wooden structures. They aren't wooden structures. They're very unique homes. And the perspective that he shows of the proposed building on Kipling Street from across the street is not accurate at all. It's showing like there's almost a park there, like you have all this space there. It's not. Take a look at it. There's a home there with a woman living there with a fence around her yard. You cannot have I would say, inaccurate, almost deceitful picture that they're proposing there from that view. It just doesn't make sense. It just does not fit. And the traffic's going to be a real concern, all of that coming in and out around the corner. I have no problem with Ms. Wong wanting to develop that. I do think it can be made into a beautiful corner. It's just too big and doesn't fit right there. And I ask you to please consider that for this, lovely little street.
Thank you very much for your comments. So with that, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move back to the board for comments. And again, I'll begin with Board Member Valentine.
I have distilled my comments to 5 pieces. The first one, I would love to be able to commend the applicant and the architect team for a fantastic improvements on this revision. I think that I can appreciate the change in rhythm and the effect that it's having on the step down on the university frontage. I wonder if there's any way to replicate that same step down on the Kipling side. I think you've heard some of the concerns, but we can go there in just a moment. I would also, number 2, like to acknowledge excuse me, this splendid guidance and this considered slog by staff through this marathon of compiling and assists. And I think everyone involved has put forth a commendable effort, so especially Christy Fong, who has been tirelessly attached to this, to make sure that we're equipped to make a valuable opinion. I would also, number 3, just like to state for the record and for those who might be watching that, like it or not, this project is a perfect example of continuing an unfunded parking liability for downtown. It utilizes all the loopholes created by the needs of a prior construction era 5,000 square feet are exempt from parking requirements coupled with years of in lieu parking fees takes 92 required parking spots down to 40, 30, with 35 being provided. So, you know, that's 40% of the required parking. So over the next 50 years of the lifetime of this building, we've got a 60% parking deficit. Now I'd like to go to the elements of my analysis of the structure and the impacts. I spoke regarding the university frontage, and I think that this is far improved. I'm not sure that we've landed best yet, but we're definitely at better. I wonder if, with respect to finding number 2, the project is compatible in the downtown urban context when. So you notice that staff has very carefully defined the constraint of how we're finding the design to be compatible with the immediate environment of the site. We define the immediate environment of the site to be the whole of the streetscape of University Ave, when in fact, I would contend that the design is compatible with the immediate environment of the site also requires that it be compatible with the Kipling site as well. It's one of the problems of a corner site. So on the north elevation, I'm not sure, but I think after studying it yesterday and walking around some of the other 4-story buildings downtown Palo Alto, that there seems to be sufficient wiggle room on that 4th floor to make that 4-story read less visible, which would help me with finding number 2. I think we need to say that the design is compatible with the immediate environment of the site on all sides. Number 2, with respect to this massing idea on the Kipling side, you know, you have this 42-foot stairwell now, and I was really inspired in Paris. There's a museum that has a 50-foot tall living wall. And I'm sure that you don't want to go through the technicalities of adding a living wall to 42 feet of stairwell space. But it's an idea that would turn a cement structure into public art, perhaps. Number 3, I would suggest that a better way to treat the alleyway is to continue that planter on the corner side and pull it through and have that be the buffer to the utility area rather than the bollards that are proposed. So I'd like to talk first about, I guess, fourth, about the pedestrian findings. So I'm referencing attachment E, I'm referencing the context-based design criteria findings. And I'm thinking that, you know, where we talk about pedestrian use, I think that well, we can maybe perhaps flip there. You know, in the context-based design criteria findings, we say that any development which will promote the establishment of pedestrian-oriented design, and that we are achieving pedestrian-oriented design when new construction shares these characteristics. There, you can set your watch, I don't know if you're aware of this, you can set your watch by the residents of University Avenue that walk down there in the mornings and use that corner in particular for resting. Particularly the elder senior citizens that live at Lytton Gardens, that's their walking route. And they go around that awkward wall that's existing into that diagonal plaza, and that's sort of their resting spot. So I think the existing design is far more pedestrian friendly than the proposed design. I know that we brought this up in the last meeting, and your response, which I believe can be found in the notes, I think on page 13 of the transcript, where you say, you know, it was important for the client to have a window on that corner in this proposal. I think that there's a way to have the window on the corner and to have a truly pedestrian-friendly moment there. You also mentioned that the design context guidelines have 5 different options proposed for the corners, only one of which is actually the corner that you use. The other 80% are actually some version of a diagonal corner. And 50% of the corners from Kipling on up towards Alma are diagonally treated. So that's number 4, the pedestrian findings. I think it would be more appropriate to follow the pattern of having an open corner where 50% of the corners are open than to choose otherwise. And I think my 5th comment would just be referencing the public art. I think, for me, public art is accessible all the time. And I know that the Public Art Commission might think otherwise and say, as long as it's accessible for 40 hours a week, it's public. But I like to call a spade, and if it's public art, then we can see it and enjoy it. And if it's inside a lobby and there's a receptionist there, that doesn't read or feel to me as public art. That concludes my comments.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Goyer.
Okay, first of all, I think this is a great improvement over what you showed us the last time.
Thank you.
The breaking up, especially on University Avenue, I think is helped tremendously. An interesting point that you mentioned as far as the glass, if you want to call it, guardrails, having the opportunity to show clutter, things like that on the balcony, the private balcony of residences. In another municipality where I'm involved is the concept is they should be, they're not allowed to be open or clear, hence, so you don't see anything. What's worked successfully is having something like this, same material, only it's fogged. So you don't see what's going on back there realistically, and yet it still doesn't have the perception of the wall going up another 3.5 feet. So it does wonders as far as hiding possible clutter. I tell you, let me finish my thoughts, and then you can. A couple of other things. We keep hearing the whole thing about the mass and everything else, and I understand that. But again, there have also been comments people made that of anything, if we're going to do massing, it's probably better on University Avenue, or at least right at that intersection, than it would be further down off University Avenue. Although I think this design could lend itself to cutting back a little bit. As in other buildings we've seen, the large eyebrow, if you want to call it, at the corner could be cut back to at least give the perception of, no, I'm talking about on the actual Kipling University Avenue corner. That eyebrow could be cut back. It really isn't going to change the function of the, I'm talking about, well, I don't know, right there.
Oh, you're calling that an eyebrow?
Right there. Again, because, you never see anything in true elevation, you see it in perspective. So with that moved back, it makes it look a great deal more like a 2-story building than it does a 4-story building. It's been very successfully done on the 4th floor that it almost looks like a 3-story building, as you've...
Yeah, this does look 3 stories right here. This is 3 stories.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying the building totally is a 4-story building. That's what I meant. And then on the other, again, on the back side with the Kipling and alleyway corner, again, the perception is, I'm not saying that I think what you've done here is a great improvement over what's was done previously, but again, by pulling the balcony, if you want to call it, out further, you've just enhanced the massing of it. If you reduce or get rid of the eyebrow on the 3rd floor and cut back the balcony somewhat on the, the eyebrow on the 4th floor or whatever, and the balcony on the 3rd floor, it would help, again, the perception of massing on that corner.
So there is no 4th
You're talking about this?
So this is third floor.
Cut that back.
So that's the third floor.
This is
Okay,
third floor. Yeah.
The eyebrow of the third floor and the actual balcony of the third floor. Cut that back a little bit.
So you're saying this part right here then?
Right, cut that back a little bit because you've brought it out, it sticks out further than the adjacent.
It does, yes, it does.
And I understand from an architectural view, you know, it's always the conflict of, do I do it because it looks better in an entity unto itself, or how do I do it to adapt to the the adjacent, you know, surroundings? So I mean, it's a game
just
to get the balance just right. So this the eyebrow again, same thing that above that, holding that. I liked it, but again, it does give a perception of mass.
So this is 28 feet right here.
It's
just
what?
28 feet, just to
Right.
give you an idea of the size.
No, I understand that.
So it's two-story.
And like I said, I'm not saying get rid of the whole thing altogether. You need to have that movement around there. But again, it's perception. You know, I'm not expecting you to cut the, you know, a floor off the back there, but.
No, I really like how this line continues down the back alley as well. the materials
Again,
for that.
you know, I'm not arguing that. You know, but you have to look at this in the context, and also that, you know, with a one-story building next to it, there's things that you, you know, sometimes have to give up on the design to accommodate those. Other than that, like I said, it's definitely a tremendous step in the right direction.
Thank you.
And I think that's it.
I wanted
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
respond to the terrace comment. And so many apartments that you see in downtown settings have terraces that are very shallow. And so there's really nowhere else for someone to put their barbecue or their bike or their broom or their mop or whatever they have, and it adds to clutter. It was deliberately decided to make these terraces 16 feet deep and create places to be able to pull that kind of personal property back. So you would leave it kind of back near wherever where the wall is, as opposed to out on that. Was
But for what I'm saying is, I'm not asking you to cut back anybody's private balcony so they can't put their barbecue out there.
No, I know. You were saying to perhaps frost the glass.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But
And I'm
again,
saying
you
it
know,
might not
if
be
you've got a
necessary.
16-foot, like with anything, if you've got a storage space, it's amazing when you assume it's huge, and, you know, 3 weeks later it's full. So, I mean, if it's there, they'll use it.
Thank you.
Board Member Kim.
Thanks for coming back with your presentation. For members of the public, I just hope they realize how incredibly difficult this process is, and just the amount of time and design, you know, muscle that it's taken to get here. And I really applaud your revisions, and I think that you know, almost everything all around it has really made the building better, not just for the sake of design, but for its neighbors as well. And I'm really appreciative of the new rhythm that's created by separating out kind of that fourth piece to the left. And I think there are also a lot of, you know, little minor revisions that maybe haven't been presented that really make the building read better and nicer, such as lifting the stone on the first floor there. And
that reveals the body of the
Right.
white.
Right, I think there's a lot of things in articulation and the way that the building elevations read that make it not only better in elevation, at a straight on elevation, but they'll actually improve it quite a bit from a perspective standpoint of someone that's walking down the street or driving down the street. I like that the building really reads as a 3-story mass. Which it always did, but I think it reads a lot better now that it doesn't read quite as long because you've separated out that one piece at the end. Just a comment about the public art, I did realize that the public art space was maybe reduced, but I could almost argue that it's actually more visible now that the way it is, because it's kind of a straight shot into that lobby rather than trying to read it on the sidewall of the lobby as you had it previously.
The lobby is also a corner of frameless glass now. Whereas before it was just a front.
Right. I think it's, you know, like I started saying that it was difficult. I think it's so difficult to try to make this such a great design and to, you know, with the restraints that you're given, how to make it blend in, and I think a lot of it has to do with zoning and not just architectural aesthetic, that it has to be the way that it is. And I think that it's a much better building. I think it addresses both the university and Kipling sites much better. And I guess the only comment that I would have in anything that I would like to see possibly improved upon is the corner of University and Kipling. Whether that's an angled corner, a 45, or a window on the corner, I think maybe it could be a little bit more generous to funneling in people onto Kipling because it is such a small street. But just because it's a larger building, I don't think it's going to cause any more people hitting cars or side mirrors than there are now. I mean, it's a single-story building as it is, and there's already so much of that going on, so I don't see how we could really mitigate those problems. Let me just see if I've missed anything here. Yeah, I'm just appreciative of a lot of the little things that maybe weren't presented upon, but that, to me, make a big difference in the way that the building reads and the way that the building presents itself to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Liu.
Okay, so I've got Ken, just in general, I'm very happy with the revisions. I do have a lot of questions for you. I was wondering if you could walk us through the materials, and as a note in particular, the Houseman stone that I saw like on the website looked substantially darker than all of your elevations, and so I was wondering what you were thinking about this. I mean, that's like completely different than this sort of the beige. Everyone understands renderings are always hard to reproduce, but yeah. So I mean, really, you're thinking of a medium gray as opposed to this sort of beigeish color. Yeah.
So yes, the Board Member Liu, the main framework of the building form is that Pietra Serena in that finish, and it wraps down, obviously, Kipling as well, and it returns back on the balconies. That is then contrasted with the Neoporie ceramic glass, that everything that you see white on the model, or on the rendering, is that material. So the main materials of the building are essentially a stone or stone-like material. That Neoporie is also the base of the storefront as it wraps around. So it's very nice contrast, very refreshing and light. The plaster finishes are primarily towards the back of the building, on the side of the building. And the other stone that you see is actually on the rooftop terrace. So that's not something, unless you are living there, that you would see. There's another board there that has that. And then the concrete, the sandblasted concrete, is essentially the planters on Kipling. It's this wall here, as it wraps out, the planters comes across and then up the stairs, so it's sort of like holding the lobby form.
The glass.
Yes. The Neoporie glass, or the? No,
actually, just the window glass. So I mean, I did notice on your like on one of your recent buildings, like 278 University, the glass is really dark. I mean, for retail.
Shouldn't be. It's just clear glass. It's not low iron. It's just clear glass.
Yeah, I know. But even clear glass, I know. Yeah, but even clear glass, I mean, you can't even see. I mean, from a retailer point of view, I mean, it's really hard to see.
It's clear glass. I don't know what else to do. I mean, we could do. You could do a low iron glass, which would get you as light as you could possibly be. A lot of it has to do with the illumination.
Illumination is key, and then the double pane is part of the problem. And so, just the solar orientation.
We want it as clear as possible.
Is it possible to do low iron on the first floor, on just the storefronts? I mean, I realize it's very expensive.
Right.
I mean, it's partly that you have. Well, you don't have to decide at the moment. I would just say consider.
We would certainly consider that.
Because it's really important. I see so many new mixed-use buildings, and the windows are too dark.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not isolated to you. I'd say it's a widespread
Right, I'm
issue.
a proponent. When we typically use solar band 70.
Yeah, just.
Then sometimes solar band 60, but which also has the low iron pane.
Okay, so thank you for that. And then also on the, I noticed there's no landscape, and so I was also thinking about the plants and the planters, and also the sidewalk replacement colors. And this comes up on all of our downtown projects. We don't have anything.
The site, we were just going to match the standard lamp black and the existing sidewalk pattern as it wraps around. Nothing special on the.
Okay.
There's no custom paving.
And then are you going to? And then, is there a landscape plan that we haven't seen? Is there something in the works, or is there? I know there's not much, but.
Yeah, there's not, Alex. We can certainly, put a list of what we'd like to use in that planter. This planter came about in the last, last month, and we didn't engage a landscape architect at that point, but we think it's a nice place for a planter. But if you're interested in what kind of plant material we would have in there, yeah, we could certainly provide that.
I think also in the descriptions, and I think in your rendering, you're showing planters up on the 4th floor roof terrace, but we don't actually have anything submitted for it. I think there's just
correct.
They're illustrative only.
I think there's a photograph of the planter, but not the kind of plant.
Yeah. And I mean, and you're showing stuff in the perspectives, right. And then also on the lighting, I think that there is photometrics of the 1st floor, but I was wondering if you could provide them for the exterior balconies. Yeah, I'm sorry. Actually, let me ask that for staff. Since the exterior balconies are all open to the streets and the alleys, can we require those light fixtures be included in the photometrics? Because it's all outdoor. I mean, it's outdoors.
Yes, so we would support that condition or request.
Okay. And in my mind, Ken, the thing that just drives me crazy is that, like on your AT&T building on Page Mill Road. I know you didn't do the working drawings, but there's that one ugly fluorescent light fixture over the exposed stairway, and I'm sure that keeps you up at night.
It does.
But that's the kind of thing that I want to avoid, and I would expect on a project like this that you would not do that on University Avenue.
Too, but
yeah,
we didn't have the opportunity to continue with that project.
Yeah, so I understand that, and that's one of the things that, but I think that's important.
Board member Lou, the owner just informed me, and I had forgotten, on the terrace, they're boxwood hedges in the planters on the 3rd floor.
Good. And then I have one more question, is detail 15 on sheet A8.1. I could not understand that. I was wondering if I'm misreading it. So I think that's the transition between the 1st floor and the 2nd floor on Kipling. Near the.
Do you see where it's keyed?
It's keyed on A3.1, sort of above the Kipling Street retail entrance. So there's a column, like say between the your.
I see it.
Yeah.
That should actually be the neoprene ceramic glass.
Right, with the stone, yeah.
Correct.
So I think that detail is just, it's either wrong, not keyed correctly or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I think those are all my questions.
Thank you.
So I have some comments. One is, I think that there's a lot of neighbors are concerned about the massing. And so I would say this one project is a little different, right? Because it's a 2.86 is our correct floor area ratio. Yeah. And that's because of the transfer of development rights. And so it's an unusual circumstance here. I mean, normally, Amy, you correct, is normally 2.0 maximum floor area for mixed use?
Correct, 1.1 to 1 for each type of, for
Each
commercial,
use,
1
right.
to 1 for residential.
Right, so it's a little different circumstance because of that, and that we don't, I mean, we can require it compatibly, but I mean, but we can't reduce the TDR component of that at the board level. Is that my understanding correct?
Yes, the applicant has the ability to transfer development rights to this property, and so we get into a conversation of how that's executed, being that it's a lot of floor area.
Yeah.
Well, 5,000 of it is the exempt from parking.
Right.
The balance is we provide the parking for it.
Yeah.
So the 4,200, we're providing the parking for that.
Right. And then the 5,000 square feet that is exempt is because this project was already in process, is that correct? And that the council has changed that rule for subsequent projects. So, but that's
Correct.
the way it is.
And that was earned prior to council's action.
Right, that's correct. Back when in October of 2013, when things changed, if somebody had already secured transferable floor area, bonus floor area with parking, before that time, it was allowed to continue with that entitlement, basically.
Good. There is, I think one of the residents was asking for like a Victorian district or something on Kipling. And I think that there was some mention of it in our draft urban design plans for downtown, but there isn't any official district like Professorville or whatnot. And we don't really have the purview to create something like that. There's another concern just about the sort of the canyon effect and the height relative to a narrow street. And what I've always been taught was that if you have a right-of-way, so Kipling is 50-foot right-of-way. I know that people are mentioning 29-foot street, but I'm saying the building to building is 50, that you can go up 50 feet, and that proportion is sort of the maximum that you would want to go. And I think that on this particular project, you're going up about 40 feet to the third floor, and then you have a substantial setback for the
glass
for the rest
rail
of it.
goes up another foot, but
yeah,
correct.
So I am comfortable with that. Those are with that proportion.
Great.
I would say, like, if in your previous scheme where you had the stair tower 50 foot going right up to Kipling, that would be very challenging for me. But with the revisions that you've made, I'm comfortable with that. And I do like the changes that you've made on University Avenue. I think that's all great.
Great, thank you.
So I'm pretty good to go on this project. I would support the other board members are concerned about the corners, and I'm willing to go along with that, with those potential revisions. And I think that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great comments today. Christy, very nice staff report. Thank you. We started our day today with Mr. Belier, I'm not sure I'm getting his last name right, but the first member of the public who spoke, and then he had to leave.
Oh.
And one of the things that he said is that he believes this project makes Palo Alto better. And I have to say, as I sat down to review the project, and as I was walking around the site and I'm thinking about this project, the question for me is not, will it make Palo Alto better? Because I know that it will. I think it's an improvement over what's there. The question is it good enough? Have you gone far enough? Have you refined this enough to give us a building that will last for the next 100 years, and we're gonna all be happy that it's here? And I think about the beauty of the Kipling homes. It's this unique little pocket. It's definitely a consideration. But, and I want to make clear that I want the expectations of the applicant, not Mr. Hayes, but his client, who's written a number of letters to us and is very clear about wanting to move this project forward, is that most projects that are in the downtown area go through 3 reviews, 3 serious, significant reviews. And while the applicant might be impatient to get this over with. It's really important for us to get this right. And so I think that what you're hearing from the board today is really positive, and we're all saying that this is headed in a very good direction, and all echo comments made by others that the refinements that you've made based on the comments that you heard are really very nicely done.
Thank you.
Very nicely done, and Board Member Kim made a good point about how complex this is to do. And I don't think people really realize how complex this is, and how much, when we say to you, can you come back to us in 2 weeks, the amount of work that goes into that and the fire drill you have to go through to get that done is enormous.
That's why we weren't here in December.
I have to say that I'm really happy that you didn't come back so fast, and that you've taken the time to try and get it right, that you're making the effort to try and make it good enough for us. There were really major issues the last time we looked at this, and we were talking about just general building massing. Now we're talking about details. Great. And that's the right kind of conversation for us to be having. This is what the comp plan anticipated. This kind of project is what our rules anticipate. The ability to transfer development rights, the height limitations, the goals for University Avenue. The documents that guide us guided you to this solution, and I appreciate that. If people aren't happy with that, this is the right time to get involved. Add your voice to the conversation, help author the new comp plan. Please get involved. But Alex sort of exactly captured what I think, which is a 50-foot wide street, a 50-foot wide height, a 50-foot height. Those are the general rules that I was taught in architecture school and have played out over my career, and I feel are very valid. And I think that contextually, this building is really compatible today with its surroundings, and that the methodology that you've taken to minimize the appearance of height and massing are generally very successful. I'll just start with the corner. I happen to think that at a narrow street, it's important not to erode the corner. Let's hold it. And I think the choice that you've made to square off the corner is the right one. And so, we'll let that play out wherever it plays out, but I feel actually very strongly that you've done the right thing by holding the corner and identifying the way this building turns. Let's talk about the terraces. They're enormous. I've never ever had a client say to me, geez, I've got too much storage. It's just never come up. Stuff's gonna get stuck out there. You can't control what people lean against the glass. You can't control how this looks. And I'm not comfortable with the project moving forward with clear railings the way they're designed. So from my perspective, you'll need to do something different to get me to say yes to this. Whether it's fritted glass or whether you choose to use some kind of a perforated panel or something that conceals what's going on behind.
And not restrictions in the apartment leases because they are apartments.
We don't have the ability to do that.
No, but the owner can.
The owner can, but I don't think that the city has purview over that from what I understand. I mean, I'd appreciate if the owner would do that. I think it would be appropriate, and I think it'll help because even shadows and things behind the glass will appear. Things, that stick up above the railing, stuff like, it's going to be, we can't control everything, but I'd like to control what I can. And I think that.
So then frosted glass would be what I would recommend.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. We'll look forward to that. That's great. I wanted to just ask, I know you've done a lot of work refining this, and I wanted to just ask you one quick question about the way you've designed the dark, I don't know how to describe it, this two-story piece that wraps the corner. The bottom border of that is 4 tiles high, and the top of it is 4 tiles high.
Right.
The way you've got it. Did you ever look at it with 3 tiles high at the top to try and just get it to be a little bit lighter up there?
I felt it was important for that framework to be consistent on the top and the bottom. We looked at a bunch of different during this latest revision. And we came back to wanting, if we lowered the top, but at the same time, we brought the bottom up because we don't like the way it looked.
I was just wondering if you ever looked at them being different.
That would have been different. We brought the bottom up because we didn't like the way it looked.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, I'll leave it to you to have studied that, and that works. I'm fine with that. I was just thinking it might be a way to lighten that elevation just a little bit more, expose a little bit more of the frosted glass at the top, but I think it'll be fine the way it is. I agree with Robert about the rear corner. You know, I appreciate your intent about this eyebrow element continuing across the lot 30 elevation, but I think to me, that's less of a priority than trying to really open that corner up, lessen its impact. I mean, the elegance of this neighborhood that's at the back and that facing directly towards these homes, I think is a big priority. And while I wouldn't suggest cutting the terrace back, I think that the organization of this building and these big blocky forms that are moving around and transferring past each other are really important to hold on to. I think that pulling that eyebrow back up at the top there
Now, let me make sure I'm
wouldn't
clear.
do damage.
Are you referring to this sticking out towards the
Yeah,
alley?
I'm fine with that corner the way it was. I thought what Vice Chair Guyer was suggesting was cutting that terrace back, and I'm saying I wouldn't support that. I think leaving the terrace the way it is fine. It's the eyebrow at the top of the third floor. Yeah, that's it.
Well, that can certainly push back. We were trying to provide weather protection for anyone that wants to take the stair.
Yeah, maybe
But coming out the
different
elevator.
material, different material, some other, maybe it doesn't have to come all the way out to the lot 30 elevation, that it starts to step back in the same way you've done such a nice job of stepping the upper floors back on the university side. I'm looking for pieces to step back.
And you realize this is metal panel. Yeah. I thought maybe you thought it was.
I can't tell
glass or
exactly what it was, and I wasn't looking through my drawings quickly enough to find it, but just in terms of massing and form, it feels like it's creating a big shadow. I mean, it's the east elevation, but it's really the northeast elevation, and so there's a lot of shadow that's going to come off of that thing. I think we do need some landscape information from you. I'd like to really understand what that is. There's an inconsistency between the civil drawings and your drawings. I think you're calling out maidenhair trees for the replacement trees, and the civil drawings are calling out something, ginkgo biloba. And so we just need to get clarification about which one it's going to be.
It's ginkgo.
I'm sorry?
It's a ginkgo, right? Yeah.
Is that this? Oh, maidenhair is
tree,
the
yeah.
common name for. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a novice. All right. And that's okay. Thank you. And I guess I would prefer to see a real tree up on the terrace, not a boxwood shrub, something small, but something that would really, would really stand up and have some character up there, give some softness to the top edge of the building. I think it would be great for us to understand that you're irrigating those and draining those carefully, and what the material is that's going to be in them. And so if you can be clear about that, I would encourage something that's got some height and shape to it to add some character to that edge of the building, but be happy to see what you propose for that. And I will be very forthright in saying that art in the lobby is not public to me. That's like a picture that the owner hangs on a wall or a piece of sculpture that they put in the lobby, but I think the Public Art Commission needs to grapple with this a little bit, but for me, I think that the intent, the spirit of this effort is to do something that's public in nature and not hidden or concealed, or I appreciate that 40 hours a week is a statement, but to me that's not what I'm looking for in public art. So I'll hope that you might go a different direction with that, and let that play out with the Art Commission. I had a number of comments on the report and some language in here that I'll just run through really quickly if you don't mind. So on page 2 of attachment B, the draft conditions of approval. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm gone too far. I'll do that one first. Number 11, it says all future signage, outdoor furniture for this site shall be submitted for architectural review. Is it inappropriate for the ARB to also take a look at what the public art is and how it's being placed?
I think that can be a return item that you get to, yeah, I mean, obviously, at the very next meeting, they probably won't have it all, but certainly
future item submitted.
Getting to see that. And a signed program is probably
We can handle that at
a good
subcommittee or something
idea.
like that, but I'd like to have public art added to that comment. I'm sorry, back a few pages, I went a little too far. So page number 1, and Catherine had mentioned this word in finding number 2, the word when in the middle of the paragraph. And I was thinking that maybe rewording this finding to say that the project is compatible in the downtown urban context where the immediate environment along University Avenue is comprised of buildings, not just when. And in the last sentence, the proposed building with, in place of careful, I would say contextual consideration of massing and setbacks. Then in item number 4, in the middle of the paragraph again, I would strike the words "a strong concentration of," so that it just reads that the finding can be made in the affirmative and that the project is generally consistent with the Downtown Urban Design Guide, particularly when the project reinforces University Avenue as the retail core of downtown Palo Alto by maintaining ground floor retail uses. That's enough. And I would actually take out the last sentence. I think that that's not appropriate for this finding. And then in just a second, and I'll come back to you. So wanted to just make sure that we were clear that finding number 5 is accurate. There are no other land uses this is transitioning, that, you know, we're going from the CDC GFP to the CDC GF. Is there no reason to make a finding about that? I just want to make sure we're covering all of our bases in case of.
Sure. The P is more of a design zoning combining district than a use. It doesn't specify uses.
All right, that's perfect, thank you. And then in finding number 12, I always react to this. I'd prefer not to use the word modern. I think it's contemporary. And then finding 13, I'm not able to actually evaluate that now because we don't have the landscape documents. And as well, finding 14, so we'll study those when we get to them. And then I'm sorry, I know these are nitpicky things, but I'm expecting that we're going to have careful review. So I'm jumping now to attachment E, the comprehensive plan table, which is, I don't know, you know, a big chunk of the way back here. And in policy L20, I think it's just been miswritten. It reinforces street corners, not concerns. And I'm sorry, jumping up one level, one program L19, the first note there, reinforce University Avenue as the retail core of downtown Palo Alto by maintaining, just strike the word which. And then the very last thing is in attachment H. See, I read these, right? We read these. It lists out 429 University Avenue Project Mitigation Monitoring Program, and right in the middle of the page, it actually says 385 Sherman Avenue.
Yeah, and that is in the staff reports to date, that revised attachment H, the preamble introductions, is actually at place right now.
Okay, great, thank you very much. So sorry for all those nitpicks, but just want to make sure we're on it. So I think Board Member Ballantyne had another comment.
Back to nitpicking, I guess. On finding number 4, worst
attachment
of attachment A, that Chair Pop just referred to. The finding can be made in the affirmative that the project is generally consistent with the Downtown Urban Design Guide. I redlined the word generally. I've wrestled with that. I'm not convinced. When I read the guidelines, I think the finding should be that we can find in the affirmative that the project is consistent and not, we don't have to qualify it with the use of the word generally. So I'm just concerned because first we say it's only generally consistent and then we define the parameters under which we are finding it to be generally consistent. So for me, it's either consistent or it's not, and we shouldn't have to qualify our findings.
So there are a lot of items in the guidelines, and I don't think we're consistent with all of the items in the guideline, and so I think that's why they use the word generally, is we're not suggesting that it's totally 100% consistent, but it's generally consistent. So I'm actually comfortable with that language, and if you're not, feel free to say so, but I'm okay leaving it the way it is.
I might offer an option to, instead of saying generally consistent with the applicable guidelines.
Perfect.
If that's...
Better.
That's great.
Better, thank you. Thank you, yeah.
Anyone else have additional comments? So we're looking for some type of action here, whether it's a continuance to resolve these additional items or if someone wants to craft a motion.
I think in the past, I would just say that normally if there's something with revolving around massing, then we have it come back to the board. If it's details and other things like that, then it's usually subcommittee or consent calendar or whatnot. It sounds like, I would say that the corner is important, or both corners are important. And so my inclination would be for it to come back to the board.
Good. So do you want to move that?
Well, I was just doing a poll, informal poll.
I'll agree with that.
You want to set it for a time certain?
Mm-hmm. Going to make a motion?
Okay, in the motion then for 429 University Avenue, I move that we set this for a time certain, I guess 2 weeks from now, is what everybody's agreed to come back for reviewing.
Let's check with the staff and the applicant about what date we might be able to get back.
Excuse me, but 2 weeks from now is January 29th. We do not have a regular meeting on that date.
Well,
So,
okay, whatever, but I meant the next meeting.
Yeah,
I guess.
just let's hone that a little bit. So our next meeting is February 5th, and we would not be able to generate a staff report for that meeting. So the 19th is a better choice for our review process timeline.
Okay, if everybody's happy with that, or actually that's about the first one we can go. Okay, so it's the, let's say the February 19th meeting then.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, so that passes 5-0-0-0 to the 19th.
Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for your presentation. Great progress. All right, so with that, we'll move forward to any board or staff announcements, updates, reports, or comments. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss publicly?
I just have one thing that I would like to announce, that this is the year 2015, and Happy New Year, by the way, for the periodic ARB awards. So 2015, last time we did this was 2010, 2005 before that. So we are going to embark on that this year. So it's a work program item for the ARB, and we'll need to target a couple of dates. One of them could be a retreat, as we did 5 years ago, to kind of sit in a more casual setting around a table and look at the completed projects, built projects that have been through the ARB. So I'm kind of excited about that because
I'm excited about that too. I think it's a great opportunity for us to look back. I think particularly in light of all the dialogue that goes on about design in our community, I think that what I would ask is if you could, either yourself or through your staff, outline a process for us and maybe some target dates so that we can get onto the tasks and get it done. And we will we'll work toward doing that this year. I think it's a great opportunity, and it's a fortunate occurrence for this board.
I think so, yeah, and I would just say something to look forward to. The last time we did this was 2005. I just saw a picture the other day of our reception. We had a reception in the lobby. We had displayed the photographs, large format displays, and then a council
Yeah, it was great.
session.
It was really fun. Yeah. I wanted to bring up that I was asking for a change to the methodology and how communication gets delivered to the board. I think I may have mentioned this before, but I want to just make sure that it's clear what I'm asking for. So currently, when members of the public send email, what happens is it goes to the Architectural Review Board email address, which is then directed to the secretary. Diana receives those. She also receives any spam that address gets or anything else. She filters that and then provides it to us. And I was suggesting that it might be more timely, particularly in light of a lot of communication that comes right before a meeting and other things, for us to have that auto forward to our personal email addresses. And I was in favor of that. I asked about how much spam comes in. It's not significant. And I know personally I would prefer to have those things go to Diana just the way they always do, so that it's recorded properly, but that it electronically forwards to us immediately. Would anyone have an issue with that occurring?
I would suggest that so long as we make that change, that there needs to be some sort of process safeguards in place for the city. I think we as a board might be aware, but when there's a changing of the guard, of the liability risk of us responding in some way as untrained sort of representatives for the city, of the open meetings policy, that we would respond somehow inappropriately. So I'm fine with the idea. I think I wonder if there's not a concern that we would somehow create liability for the city in responding in a way that we were inadvertently violating something. I think we would be okay with it because we've had the discussion and sort of the knowledge is commonly held in the hive mind, but I think future people might not, and I don't think there's any guarantee that the new people might come in and understand the liability risks.
So I have a solution. We have bylaws for the ARB, and I think that would be a place where we could, describe what this is. Receipt of information. It's not intended to allow for a back and forth. That email that comes, and certainly what we don't want to have is the inadvertent, reply all, and then it's a meeting. So everyone has to be vigilant on their own behavior. But we could memorialize this in bylaws as to email protocol for future boards.
I think that's a fine idea. I know that the Deputy Assistant District Attorney is in the process of crafting some bylaws for us at this point. And so perhaps if you don't mind, would you relay that to her for us? I know my general practice is not to respond to any emails that I receive for that. The one exception to that, and Amy and I were just talking about this before the year ended, was I would like to create some type of response that is appropriate to be sent out when someone sends a note to us that is asking for things that are outside of our purview. That they're asking us to take action on a project in regard to parking or zoning or some such item that we don't have the ability to comment on. I'd like to be able to notify the person that we've received your message And after reading the content, it appears that it would be most appropriate to direct your comments to the following. And it might tell them where to, whether that's planning and transportation or city council or to staff or something like that, so that they don't feel that their comments are falling on deaf ears, when really the issue is just that it's not something that we can solve.
I have an idea for that too.
Please.
That there may be, an automatic response, which like usually it's an out-of-office response, but it would be an automatic response that would say the ARB has all of them, and staff have received this email. There are certain areas that are the ARB. We could do a stock paragraph, and it may sound bureaucratic,
That's great.
but it's just to alert whoever sends, what the area of the ARB's purview
That's
is
great.
and
Yeah,
which areas are.
The two goals I was trying to achieve were A, we've heard you, got your message and we heard you, and B, it is or isn't the right place to send it, and if it's not the right place, where you should go to make sure that you're heard properly. Yeah, that's great, Amy. I think that's a great suggestion. All right.
May I add one?
Please.
Oops. One other comment that I think like the city of Berkeley, when they do this email stuff, there's a sort of a disclaimer saying that emails that you send to the city are incorporated into the public record. Because I have had like a phone conversation with somebody who wanted to remain anonymous, and they are allowed to remain anonymous, but she sent an email and it was in the file, and the applicant contacted her and she was very upset, and she accused the board of forwarding her comment without her knowledge, and that's not what happened. It's in the public file, and it's open to everybody. So some people are concerned about that, and I should mention that. And then they're also allowed to speak in public, I think, as my understanding with the city attorney, that they don't have to fill out a speaker card. Like they can remain anonymous if they wish to. And we ask them to, but there is a distinction there too.
They're good. And another, I have an idea for that too, that the website for the ARB certainly could have a little couple of sentences about, email correspondence sent to the, whatever, we can put the address, and then say, buyer beware, whatever, just be aware that your comments will be public, so that they know before they send the email that's what they're getting into.
Great. All right. Is there
So
something?
so then, Amy, do you go and are these all your 3 action items now? Did you just inherit 3 action items?
Yeah, I would say as the manager that's chiefly coming to these meetings, I have Jonathan today. It's great, but we also have a consultant who is kind of looking over our whole outreach function, and so certainly these are items that we could kind of talk about as far as wording the disclaimer and making it user friendly and friendly about how we encourage participation, but just beware that, yeah.
John?
That's fine.
So thank you. I'll take this opportunity to introduce myself, because I think I may have been introduced at one point, but we have a couple new commissioners who I've met kind of informally. So I'm Jonathan Late. I'm the Assistant Director to Planning and Community Environment. And I started working, I guess, at the end of September. So it's, from time to time, you'll see me sitting in the back. And of course, I work very closely with Amy. And I've had some email correspondence back with the chair, and we're working with the city attorney's office to make some refinements to the rules of order, your bylaws, and some other ideas that the chair has for improving just your operations. And I think these ideas about the email are fantastic. And the reason I stood up and came down was because I don't believe in our communications that it was the intent that individual board members would be responding to emails that come in, but rather to quicken the time that you receive the data. Because what we have done in the past is we've collected all the emails, we've removed all the spam email or junk email, and then we've passed along, when it got close to the hearing date, the relevant emails. And so now what we're doing is we're removing that filter, and you'll just be getting the emails as they come in. And I think Amy has a great idea about how we can address those questions that are not pertinent to the board. But you might see a slight increase in some junk mail through that process, but I don't think it's going to be a lot. And if it is, we can revisit the program.
Let's see how it goes. I'd rather have the stuff early.
And I would say to follow that, let us know if you, want to create a new email address. If you're, sometimes that's helpful to incorporate more mail.
All right, great. All right, anyone have any other items? All right, so with that, I think we'll close the meeting and we'll move on to our subcommittee items. Thank you very much.